Imagine discovering that the death of a beloved star, someone admired for his talent, his kindness, his light, was not an accident at all, but a cruel, deliberate betrayal. Tonight, we bring you shocking revelations from the courtroom confessions surrounding Yu Menglong's final moments. What you are about to hear has left millions speechless, angry, and heartbroken. Stay with us, because this story is not only about a tragedy, it's about the hidden darkness behind fame and the resilience of truth. For weeks, the public clung desperately to the belief that Yu Menglong's passing was nothing more than a tragic accident, an unforeseen misfortune that took a rising star far too soon. That belief provided comfort, a fragile shield against the unthinkable possibility that something darker had unfolded behind closed doors. But in the courtroom, as confessions spilled into the open, that comforting illusion was torn apart. The truth was not an accident. It was not fate. It was a crime of premeditated cruelty, carried out with chilling precision by people he trusted most. The revelation was devastating because it shattered not only the narrative of how Yu died, but also the foundation of what he lived for: trust, friendship, and loyalty. It is difficult to imagine the weight of betrayal that accompanied his final moments, once the court revealed that two of the perpetrators were men he had grown up with, childhood companions he regarded as brothers. For years, their lives had been intertwined with his, shared memories, laughter, and dreams of the future. That they would one day become instruments of his destruction was almost incomprehensible, and yet they confessed to it. This betrayal struck a deep chord with the public, for it was not only the story of a crime, but also a lesson about the fragility of human relationships. The people we welcome into our lives, the ones we call friends, carry the power to protect us or to wound us beyond measure. In Yu's case, that trust was manipulated, exploited, and finally weaponized against him. What shocked audiences worldwide was not simply that he had been killed, but that he had been betrayed by the very people who should have been his protectors. The truth revealed in the courtroom forced everyone listening to confront the most unsettling reality: that envy and malice can live quietly behind the mask of friendship. For Yu Menglong, this reality cost him his life. For the world, it opened a painful dialogue about the hidden dangers of blind trust and the vulnerability that comes with being admired, celebrated, and envied. The confession was not just evidence, it was a mirror, forcing society to look directly at the darkness that can emerge when loyalty is corrupted by jealousy. In that moment, the story of Yu Menglong ceased to be a private tragedy. It became a warning, echoing far beyond the courtroom walls. The confessions painted a picture of Yu Menglong's final moments, so haunting that even the most composed listeners in the courtroom could not remain untouched. He had not walked willingly into tragedy, nor had his fall been the swift, merciful accident many had hoped it to be. Instead, the hours leading to his death were marked by deliberate cruelty, a stripping away of his strength and dignity until he was left powerless against those who once called themselves his friends. Testimonies revealed that drugs had been slipped into his system without his knowledge, clouding his mind, draining his energy, and leaving him vulnerable to what was to follow. Forensic evidence confirmed what the words of his killers echoed: bruises, restraint marks, and signs of physical trauma, each a silent testimony to the violence he endured before his final breath. But within this harrowing account lay an even more heart-wrenching truth. Yu fought. Disoriented, weak, and betrayed, he still tried to resist. He screamed into the emptiness, his voice cracking with desperation, though no one came to his aid. He pushed back against the people he once trusted, clawed at the air, grasped for something, anything that might give him strength. Every movement, however faint, was an act of survival, a refusal to surrender to the darkness that surrounded him. And in that desperate struggle, one moment became immortalized. He slipped his Rolex watch into his pocket. It was an instinctive act. Born of chaos, Yet it became the thread that would later unravel an entire conspiracy. The image of you, battered and fading, still holding onto some fragment of resistance, seared itself into the minds of all who heard the testimony. His resistance was not enough to save him, but it was enough to leave behind the proof the world needed to uncover the truth. That detail transformed his final struggle into more than a scene of despair. It became a symbol of courage, a quiet assertion of his will, even when stripped of everything else. By the time his body was dragged toward the balcony, his consciousness was fractured, his hope extinguished, yet his final act ensured that his story would not be buried beneath lies. In those closing moments, Yu Menglong was not only a victim, he was also a fighter, leaving behind the very clue that would speak for him when he no longer could. When the identity of the mastermind was revealed, the courtroom seemed to fall into an unnatural silence. It was not a stranger lurking in the shadows, nor an opportunist seeking financial gain, but a woman whose confession revealed a motive far more unsettling than money or revenge. She admitted with startling clarity that her actions were born from envy, a corrosive bitterness that had taken root in her heart and grown until it consumed every thought and action. Unlike greed, which can sometimes be understood, or vengeance, which can be traced to a specific grievance, envy is a poison without limits. For her, every cheer from Yu Menglong's fans, every recognition of his honesty, every sign of his rising career became another wound she could not heal. Her words cut through the courtroom with chilling honesty. She confessed that Yu's very existence had become unbearable to her, not because he had wronged her, but because he represented everything she was not. His unblemished reputation, his moral compass, and the genuine affection he received from millions of admirers stood in stark contrast to her own failures and insecurities. What she could not achieve, she could not tolerate seeing in another. And so, she plotted, not impulsively, but with a cold and deliberate patience. For months, she studied his life, exploited his friendships, and orchestrated a plan that would dismantle not just the man himself, but the trust he had built around him. The most disturbing element of her confession was not merely the act of killing, but the pride with which she described it. She claimed control over every detail, directing those around her like pieces on a chessboard. The friends who betrayed Yu were not independent actors, she insisted, but extensions of her will, carrying out her orders with precision. She spoke of them with detachment, as if their humanity had been stripped away, reducing them to instruments of her obsession. This arrogance unsettled even the most hardened observers, for it suggested that her motive was not only envy, but also a hunger for domination, the desire to prove that she could control the downfall of someone so admired. Her confession did more than explain a crime. It forced society to confront an uncomfortable truth about the destructive potential of envy. It reminded us that admiration can inspire greatness, but jealousy, left unchecked, can breed unthinkable cruelty. Yu Menglong's brilliance was not extinguished by fate or by chance. It was deliberately targeted by someone who could not endure the light he carried within him.